And the Zoom is set up.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we hit 7 o'clock. If we are ready to call our evening's meeting to order, the City of San Carlos's Planning and Transportation Commission regular meeting of January 21st is now called to order. We do not have any Assembly Bill 2449 teleconference requests tonight because everyone's present. Thanks for being here, and Happy New Year to everyone. So we'll go on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bundy?
Present.
Commissioner Anand?
Present.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Present.
Vice Chair Garvey?
Present.
And Chair Clements.
Present. Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November 18th meeting, which was a long time ago. Do any commissioners have any corrections or additions to the minutes? No? And then I need a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the November 18th, 2024 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes.
Great, thank you. In a second? Wonderful. Thanks for the roll call.
Commissioner Bundy?
Yes.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garvey?
I wasn't here, but I did watch it on TV and read the packet, and I believe the minutes reflect that, so I will vote yes.
And Chair Clements.
Thank you, yes. Excellent. So we're on to item 6A, which is new business. We're going to receive a presentation on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's transit-oriented communities policy and how the City of San Carlos plans to achieve compliance. So my understanding is that this is informational and that commissioners may give feedback and get their questions answered. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Thank you,
And good
Lisa.
evening, Chair
Good
Clements and commissioners. My name is Lisa Porras, serving as the city's planning manager in the Advanced Planning Division. And before we get started with our presentation, I just wanted to take a moment and introduce you to one of our newest staff persons working in the Advanced Planning Division, and that is David Talgo. He's a contract assistant planner working with Lisa Costa-Sanders at a Good City Company, and he has been working with us, feels like a while now, but relatively new, and he's done a great job catching the rest of the staff up on MTC's TOC policy, and so you'll hear about that this evening and what efforts we're making to become compliant with this regional policy. So with that, I'd like to invite David up to give the presentation.
Welcome, David. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Lisa. Nice to meet you too. David Talgo, Contract Assistant Planner. I will be presenting this item, which is a presentation on MTC's Transit-Oriented Communities Policy and how the city plans to achieve compliance with this policy. So to go over what we'll be discussing, so I'll provide some background on the TOC policy, what its requirements are, how we are planning to achieve compliance, and I'll also outline some grant funding that we applied for last year. And one specific piece of that is the Complete Streets checklist submission that we submitted to MTC for San Carlos Avenue Design Engineering. So to go over the TOC policy, basically this is from our region's Transportation Commission. They manage transportation planning, financing, and coordination for the Bay Area. In 2022, they adopted a new policy called Transit-Oriented Communities Policy. And this introduces requirements that municipalities must comply with in order to be eligible for the One Bay Area grant funding starting in 2026. And so across the Bay Area, the TOC policy applies to the half-mile radius around any fixed guideway transit stops. This half-mile radius is known within the policy as the TOC policy area. For San Carlos, that's the half-mile radius around the Caltrain station, and you can see that depicted on your screen. So just to go over the One Bay Area grant funding and why it's important to us, we just put together some recent funding that we've received from this grant. Recently, as you can see, it's about $2.7 million, so it's a really critical piece of funding for San Carlos and all of the projects that we are trying to get done. And so we plan to we plan to meet the requirements of the TOC policy in order to continue to be eligible for this grant funding. So to go over the TOC policy requirements, there are 4 categories of policies that the city of San Carlos would need to meet within this half-mile area around Caltrain. So there are minimum residential and commercial office densities for new development. There are policies that we need to implement for affordable housing and commercial stabilization. We also must establish parking maximums and implement some parking policy reforms. And then there are also specific policies related to transit station access and circulation. So staff have engaged internally and also with MTC to assess the city's compliance, and we're making progress in all 4 of these categories. So to go over what the requirements are in more detail, for residential and commercial office density, we must adopt minimum and maximum densities for residential and office uses that are at or above the level required by the TOC policy. For housing and commercial policies, we must adopt 2 policies within each of 3 categories: production, preservation, and protection, as well as a commercial stabilization policy. For parking management, we have to adopt minimum and maximum parking requirements for residential and commercial uses at or below the level required by the TOC policy. For San Carlos, this means actually no minimum parking requirement, and we have a maximum parking requirement that we need to be at or below. So we also need to adopt a bicycle parking policy that mandates bicycle parking in residential and office uses, as well as adopting policies that establish unbundled and shared parking. For station access and circulation, we need to have a compliant complete streets policy, as well as an access gap analysis, a mobility hub plan or project, and we also need to implement and prioritize active transportation projects within the TOC area. So now to go over the progress that we have made so far. In residential and commercial office density, we have submitted to MTC our minimum and maximum densities, and they are reviewing those now. Because we recently had our housing element adopted, we're confident that we comply with these requirements in this category. For housing and commercial policies, staff have identified some policies within each of the 3 categories that we think align with San Carlos needs and our capacity to implement. Staff have also applied for grant funding to achieve compliance with the housing policies requirements. For parking management, the city is undertaking reforms to transportation demand management and parking standards, and that plan is scheduled to be adopted in spring of 2026, and that will lead to compliance in that category. And then finally, for station access and circulation, we already comply with the complete streets policy and the access gap analysis, as well as the mobility hub project requirements. And prioritizing and implementing active transportation is an ongoing element of this, and that included an application last year for the design engineering for San Carlos Avenue as part of the active transportation grant from MTC. So to go over this grant funding, in 2024, MTC released grant opportunities that help cities come into compliance with the TOC policy. We applied for 2. One was the housing policies grant that is to help implement compliant housing policies. And the second one is the active transportation grant. And this was to help complete design engineering drawings for San Carlos, which is prioritizing the implementation of active transportation projects within our TOC area. So to go over the Housing Policies Grant, San Carlos applied for help with implementing 2 policies, each from the preservation and protection categories. We selected a few that we think we would be likely to implement, but the grant application allows us to sort of continuously look at that and implement any of the 2 policies within those 2 categories. And then finally, the active transportation grant. So we applied for design engineering assistance for the first 2 blocks of San Carlos Avenue. This is a project that is outlined in the, what's it called? Yes, thank you. Downtown Streetscape Master Plan. And part of this grant was that we need to provide any feedback and questions on our Complete Streets checklist that we submitted from the PTC to MTC. And that checklist covered project description and context, alignment with local and regional plans, consideration of state and federal guidelines, stakeholder outreach, project impact. And that checklist was included in the agenda packet, pages 16 through 19. And so I'm happy to answer any clarifying questions or direct any to Lisa or Hanya, who are with us, on the Complete Streets checklist and also on the TOC policy in general.
Great, thanks for your presentation and for educating us about the TOC policy, which I know in the detailed level is very involved. So appreciate an analysis of how San Carlos is going to comply. So I'll turn it to my fellow commissioners to see if anyone would like to start with clarifying questions. Why don't we do that, and then we can give more feedback after that to to note any priorities or interest areas. So maybe we'll start down at this end with Commissioner Anand. Would you like to start with any clarifying questions? Sure. Thank you. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair. We seem so well positioned in San Carlos to be looking at this grant funding, given the rollout of the downtown plan, and being able to apply for and compete for grant funding for part of the design. Just, it seems like that the timing could be perfect. I appreciate your presentation. Thank you. Can you help me understand this term a little better, active transportation project? You said these were ongoing things and we'd submitted for a grant for design drawings for San Carlos Avenue. Does active mean we're just always looking for the next project? Can you help me understand that term? I haven't heard it before.
I think I will actually direct that to Hanya.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Hanya Hushmandi. I'm the traffic engineer for the city. Active transportation means any mode of transportation that requires physical activity. So anything other than riding car, biking, walking, taking transit where you have to walk or bike after you get off of the train or the bus, it means active transportation. So any projects that promote walking, biking, or facilitate taking the transit would count.
I get it. Thank you. That was very helpful. If I might have one more question? Is that okay?
Please.
We as a commission have in the past year or two made some policy changes for density, affordable housing, and parking to reflect new state laws or changes to state laws. Do you feel that the policies for the TOC might go beyond state law and that what we as a city might have to consider doing is a little bit more than what we've already done? Or if we are complying with state law, are we qualifying sufficiently to apply for a grant?
I think that might be a good question for Lisa.
Thank you for the Thank you for the question, Vice Chair Garvey. I wouldn't say they go above and beyond state law, but they are complementary to state law. For example, when we think about parking within the TOC policy area, which is that half mile from Caltrain Station, for example, we know that AB 2097 now allows for new development not to have to provide parking, but developers can still provide parking if they choose to. So what this TOC policy would require us to look at, again, this is all if we want to be competitive for OBAG funds, which internally we do. You know, we had conversations with community development, public works. These are grants and funds that we've received in the past, and because there's so many initiatives, we want to be competitive. So with the parking component, the TOC policy would introduce a parking maximums. A lot of cities have a minimum amount of parking that we require new development to provide, and that's been a traditional way of addressing parking for many, many decades. But with AB 2097, relative to being located near transit, you don't have to provide parking. And what this TOC policy says, well, that if there is going to be parking, we want to make sure that there's a cap. And that is one way of thinking about transportation demand management. Managing the amount of parking provided is a very good method to be TDM compliant. So you see MTC incorporating these components. And I think they're just, I can't speak for MTC staff, but our understanding is with the amount of funds that they're giving to cities in the millions and millions of dollars, they're asking cities, you know, could you look at your rules and regulations and adjust these to meet our larger regional efforts relative to providing more ways to move about in cities other than, you know, every trip being made by a car. So that is why you see some controls on parking. And then with respect to housing, as you all know, we adopted our housing element, and alongside that, we incorporated new zoning standards to achieving greater densities in order to meet our regional housing needs. And certainly HCD does put us through a really tall order for things that they want to see in the housing element. And I think what MTC is doing is sort of adding to that. I don't think it's inconsistent with the direction of state law relative to housing, but they want to make sure that at least at minimum, we have a few policies in each of the categories that they feel are very important, certainly around the transit-oriented areas. So that was production. We've got a lot of good policies in place relative to production, but we need a little bit of help with preservation and what was the third? Protection. And with the grant that we applied for, hopefully we get funded and we get technical assistance from MTC staff that can really work with us internally and help identify policies that are a good fit for the city of San Carlos. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And one last comment. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission has historically been very focused on transportation. So these grants, if I'm understanding you correctly, could be about density. They could be focused on affordable housing. So it seems MTC is offering the opportunity for grants on things that are broader than just transportation, which gives us as a city an opportunity to think about our transportation projects in the context of density and housing. Am I understanding that right?
Absolutely. I think one helpful way to look at it is that MTC is looking to maximize the use of transit in the Bay Area. And so the right land uses and affordable housing near transit really allows that, especially for some of the communities that previously have not had maybe that many people living walking distance from the Caltrain station. They want to open that up to allow for more people to access the transportation.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's all I have, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you, David. Commissioner Castaneda?
I I have a question about checklist 3. It states the grant application amount, and I'm wondering how that was determined. Is that the maximum amount that is available?
Yes, it is the maximum amount available. The total cost of that project is about $710,000,
yeah.
and $300,000 is the maximum amount that MTC is providing for that grant.
Okay.
And so the remainder would need to be provided by the city.
Okay, thank you. And just one more, when we're working on the parking management, which is goal 3, and I was looking at the transit tiers. Am I correct that we would San Carlos would fall into tier 1 and tier 3?
Only in tier 3, actually.
Only in tier 3? Okay. All right, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, on the MTC website, there is a list of every TOC area, basically, or PDA, but in the entire Bay Area. And San Carlos, it actually says we are tier 3.
Okay.
Yeah, and makes a note as well, kind of a special note.
Okay.
Commissioner Bundy, any questions?
Not at this time.
Thanks. I had a couple of questions. Per the Vice Chair's comment that the One Bay Area grant does encourage both transportation and housing and, general land uses to support the transportation. What is the likelihood of the OBAC grants for program development for housing versus kind of a concrete active transportation award? I know some cities really tend to apply for the latter, and even I think they're also eligible for housing projects, individual housing projects. But, can you talk about how you thought about likelihood of award for program development and program development for housing?
I think my understanding or my experience with this is just that we applied for the grants that we were eligible for, and we that was sort of the main driving force behind our grant applications. I don't know if Lisa wants to add any more. No?
No? Great. I wonder if you could go back to the slide about the housing programs and just clarify in each of these 3 Ps, which ones that you think San Carlos is going to be working on. Do you know yet, or is that part of the technical assistance?
So we do not know for sure. We applied with some in mind, but the technical assistance grant would allow us to pick within these categories. But I can share, we applied for, in the preservation category, the 4th one, which is condo conversion restrictions, and the 6th one, which is funding to support preservation capacity. And actually, we also applied for the 8th one, preventing displacement from substandard conditions and associated code enforcement activities. We picked 3 for this, even though we only need 2, just because we hadn't narrowed it down to 2 yet. But of course, we will do that as part of the process.
Right.
And then in the protection category, we applied for the 2nd one, which is no net loss, and the 8th one, which is tenant relocation assistance.
Oh, that's interesting, the tenant relo assistance. I'll be eager to hear which programs are selected. And I think really the ongoing challenge for every locality is how do you afford to do these programs ongoing with the sources of money that you've got. So I'll be interested to hear more after the technical assistance. I just had one more question, which is, in my experience, the TOC, what gets you credit for the One Bay Area grant is somewhat aspirational. As Lisa said, it is consistent with the state law and with the housing element requirements, but it certainly puts you more towards the aspirational side, especially for jurisdictions that have Tier 1 and Tier 2 transit areas. So is this planning effort for TOC? I mean, how do you think about this? Well, and I'll just say one other thing. It's not clear that any market for housing development or commercial development would actually at any given time agree on what the required parking should be for that project, right? And so the idea that we would be getting rid of minimum requirements, which is great, which just leaves it up to the market really, but then imposing potentially a maximum parking ratio is something that I always wonder, is this this puts it into the territory of planning exercises, but it actually can hurt project feasibility. And so can you elaborate a little bit more about parking maximums and how you're thinking about that?
I think that may be a good question for Lisa. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Clements. As the Commission may recall, one of the projects that Advanced Planning is working on are reforms to the city's transportation demand management ordinance and also parking standards, both off-street and on-street. And so as part of the process for this update, we will be using this commission, the Planning and Transportation Commission, as the technical advisory committee for the review and strategizing about the policy reforms that we're going to be making for parking and for TDM. So I think in recognition of your comment question, I think these would be good conversations to continue when we come back to this commission with more information about the strategies that we currently are looking into and would be proposing to this group. And as part of that, I can share that these will be some of the items for your consideration when we bring that back, really looking into setting parking maximums and talking about parking in a more holistic manner. This is a project that we already are working on, and it just also happens to serve this one compliance area for the MTC's TOC policy.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. So at this point, I think the floor is open for any comments about, as staff does this work and works with the technical assistance providers, if you have any areas of interest that you'd like to see or any hopes of what might come back to Planning and Transportation Commission, now's the time to kind of get that on record. So I will start down here with Commissioner Bundy.
Thank you. I'm tremendously thankful for staff's effort, both identifying these grant opportunities and applying for them, and for MTC's efforts in administering the program and reviewing our applications. I'm tremendously supportive of the San Carlos Ave project. I think it's a really important project for the city and even the region. It's an area that I use as a driver and a pedestrian, and there are certainly challenging safety issues there that it will be a tremendous asset for us to be able to address and provide that last mile connectivity to the train station. So far as priorities moving forward, I just really appreciate staff's continued diligence in this and giving us the opportunity to chime in along the way, and look forward to the work ahead. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes, I'm also very pleased that we're be able to apply for these grants. And I think these are important goals. I do have one comment. The checklist, the title of the checklist is Pedestrian and Bike Enhancements for San Carlos Avenue, and it does include one provision that's related to the in-lane bus stop on San Carlos Avenue. I know that the policies of the TOC include bus travel, and we haven't specifically mentioned that in our particular title here. So I'm quite concerned about bus transportation. I think we're going to need more of it to get people from our outlying areas into this TOC area. So I just wonder if it makes any sense to beef up that section on buses a little more. I'm not sure where the stop is going to be along San Carlos. I'm not sure what kinds of buses are going to be coming there, but any advice that we could get from the people that will be helping us on bus travel, I think would be really appreciated and can apply to other areas in the city that we're going to be looking at later on for bus travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Garvey.
Thank you, Chair. A comment. We as a commission in the 5.5 years that I've been on the commission have approved or recommended to the City Council approval for many large commercial and residential projects. And for many of them, there was a transportation demand management plan that either we certified or the city council certified. Might we have to go back and amend any of those in order to be competitive at a grant application for this kind of a grant? Or do you envision that what we've already done in those TDMs is sufficient?
I think that is also probably a question for Lisa.
Yeah, let me try to answer this. So all the TDMs that have been previously approved were approved under the city's current standards, right? And right now we're working on making those standards stronger. A key piece of TDM going forward in order to really achieve the trip reduction measures that we're seeking really is going to rely a lot on additional staff, enforcement, to really kind of get to the heart of what we're trying to achieve. So your question relates to like, well, how do we deal with existing TDM programs that the city has already adopted? One key component to underscore is that those TDM plans require annual reviews, ongoing monitoring. However, I will say that there have been challenges to keep up with those, and we see that as actually something very significant to recognize, so that as we go forward and update our TDM measures, we're really putting into place requests for how to manage the TDM ordinance, which is, like I mentioned, probably going to require more staff and oversight by the city in order to really get it done. But there is a provision in the current code that requires those TDM plans to be continually monitored. And if they're not meeting what they were required to meet, which is a 20% reduction, that's currently what we have on the books, then their strategies need to be reconsidered and reproposed under a new plan, and then give businesses a chance to comply with revised TDM strategies. So that's one way that we're going to address all of the existing TDM plans that we currently have approved so far since we've had a TDM, which I believe is since 2011.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Mm-hmm. And my last question is, how fast do we need to move? When do you envision coming back before us with next steps?
I don't think there are any foreseeable next steps at this moment for the grants. We'll hear back in March, and at that point, the city will work with MTC to initiate those projects.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Anand?
Thank you for the presentation. So, excuse me. My question would be, has a grant like this been given to other cities in the past, and are there any success stories that we can learn from?
As far as the grants that we discussed on the board today, I think this is the first time, because MTC just adopted this new policy. So they have gone to many municipalities in the 9 Bay Area region to let city staff know this is coming. They didn't want to release a notice of funding availability and there's all this new criteria you'd have to meet. So we know well in advance. That way we can take the time to position ourselves, get new policies in place, get new regulations on the books to meet the criteria for OBAG funding. But so that's the current grant application to allow us to become compliant. But for OBAG funding in and of itself, we'd happy to share with the commission, information about the many, many municipalities that have received 1 Bay Area grant funding in the past. All jurisdictions throughout the 9 Bay Area region have received quite a bit of funds. I don't know off the top of my head what the total is, but it could be hundreds of millions. And our city has received its portion of that, which was, like David mentioned, almost $3 million for projects that we were able to complete in previous years.
Thank you. It'll just be really, as we go forward in this process, it will be very helpful to just have some case studies, some success stories of some cities of similar nature, similar size, to just study and compare as we go forth and mull on as we implement things. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I had a couple of comments. First of all, thank you for this presentation. I know it doesn't sound like there was any particular precipitating event. There's nothing we have to approve today, but I really appreciate staff taking the time to make sure we understand this component of, the work that we're doing in planning, the work that we're trying to get funded also for active transportation projects. So thank you for the presentation. I am delighted that a project that we already have planned for San Carlos and in the downtown as a priority, that it is eligible and that we're pursuing it. So I think that's really to be commended. And just in general for this work and this program, I greatly appreciate the One Bay Area grant funding and MTC's focus on not only transportation anymore, but also housing and land use planning as really their core portfolio, if you will. And I think that's a culture change. And that's been happening over the last, decade or so. And I think it's really to be commended because it lets jurisdictions think together across silos about what the community needs. And in larger jurisdictions, those silos are pretty big. So it's great in San Carlos because we have one very capable community development department that thinks together, but also, now it's Public Works too with the transportation project. So anyway, I think this is a great program to help work across different groups and different eligibility criteria. I also love that equity is woven into this program and that, the housing programs aren't just production, they're all 3 Ps. And so I really enjoy this. I really enjoy this program from that perspective. I appreciate the city proposing program development work for housing. I think that's really great. And again, when you come back, I'll be interested to hear some more about what the technical assistance provider suggested and really, to Lisa's point, how do we fund ongoing the things that we would like to do? And how do we think about what to select and what funding sources that we may be able to rely on a little bit at least going forward. So I know how important that is. So those are the things that I would like to hear about and eager to hear some more information and really eagerly anticipating the awards, hoping that we get awards hearing back in March. So that's like right around the corner. Pretty exciting. Any last comments from the commission? Oh, yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment, the opportunity for us seems tremendous. The phase-in and the planning and the execution of our downtown plan will go on, I think, for years. And so there's an opportunity for us as a city to position ourselves every time this comes around to see what is next in our downtown plan execution or planning, and does it qualify, or can we realign our priorities such so that we can continually apply for the grant going forward. I think the opportunity here for us as a city is tremendous, especially given the walking and pedestrian focus of our downtown plan, the bicycle friendliness of our downtown plan, the close proximity to Caltrain. All of these things are really something that I think this grant program is focused on. So grants are very competitive, fingers crossed for this grant, but it sounds like there's other grants in the future, and it's a learning process, and we seem as a city to be really well positioned. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Your comment made me think of one more comment, if that's okay to share. We think about what's the definition of active transportation, which I appreciate, thinking a little bit more carefully about what that looks like. And I'm just wondering if any of the work that we have planned for the downtown or the areas nearby, or, the major corridors of our community, are really thinking through micromobility in a more careful way. And how do we plan for that? And then how do we encourage that? So I don't know if any of that was part of the grant application or the active transportation project. I guess that's a question.
make sure I understand your question. You're referring to things that are kind of happening outside the downtown area. Can we go back to, let me
I was
just,
thinking,
I'll go back to the
It's
circle.
our downtown, it's our roads bordering the downtown. We have some planning for El Camino responsibility, although not really, because it's the county road. But, in as much as we are thinking about mode shift to bike and ped, along with that is, e-bikes as opposed to bikes, and then also scooters and parking for the scooters, and, any other kinds of micromobility strategies that are appropriate for different parts of our community. And just thinking about how we plan for that, if everyone's going to share the bike lane, if that is part of this planning effort, at least for San Carlos Ave or other areas.
Yeah, we're certainly thinking about it as part of the downtown specific plan, and as we contemplated all of the streetscape improvements as part of the downtown streetscape master plan, which will come before you in a complete document form. You've seen a lot of the cross sections. We've considered these types of different modes, which is kind of this new, collection that's, it seems to be ever evolving, new ways to move about, to roll through your community on whatever device it might be. We're thinking about that in the downtown specific plan, the Northeast area specific plan, and certainly in the East Side Innovation District Vision Plan, there was contemplation of these, what do we call them? They're kind of like multimodal pathways. I'm not using the right word. I can't remember how we referred to it in the East Side Innovation District Vision Plan, but where there would be space for people to cycle versus walk, and really to kind of separate out those different components. So we are looking at implementation of these types of projects that would allow for all of this micromobility to occur, whether that's through new development that takes place and we have the opportunity to get a bike lane in or a pedestrian paseo in. We're implementing it that way. And then through the, I guess, mostly in the downtown specific plan boundary and also northeast. But there are segments, and maybe Hanya, there's all types of different projects that Hanya is working on that kind of would lend themselves to being micromobility friendly as well. Yeah.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. At this point, I'll ask staff if you have the feedback from us that you need, if there's anything else you'd like us to focus on.
I would say that we have the feedback we need. I will double check with Lisa. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you all very much.
Oh, thank you.
And through the chair, although this is not a public hearing, we do have the slide ready if you did want to see if anyone from the public would like to.
Thank you for the reminder, and we'd be happy to hear from the public if there are questions or comments. So if you would, if you're on Zoom, there's no one here in the chambers. If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment on item 6A, this presentation on transit-oriented communities policy from MTC, please raise your hand virtually by clicking, I think it's on reactions now, and then raise hand, or in the upper right of your picture on the dots, you can raise your hand that way. If you're joining by phone, you can press *9, and then when we call on you, *6 to unmute. Lynette, do we have anyone with a raised hand on Zoom?
There are none.
Okay. Thanks. We will give it a little bit of time more. And again, thank you to Andrea for making sure we hear from the public on this. Lynette, do we have folks who are viewing on Zoom tonight?
There are none.
Oh, okay. So I don't think we need to keep the window open. And no call-ins either. Okay. So with that, we will... It's not really a public hearing, so we're going to close public comment, although we don't need a vote on that. So thank you for that. And we're on to item 7 on the agenda, reports, correspondence, and general information. A, report on any city council actions that were recent.
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Commissioner Castaneda on something, and I'm not sure if it's under B or D. But Planning and Transportation Commission comments or reports, I am wondering how the Centennial Committee is going and what kinds of, thank you, staff, what kinds of reports or anything that you might want to bring to folks' attention here from the Centennial Committee and all the cool planning for our 100-year anniversary.
Okay, I'm getting correspondence. Quite some time ago, the full committee disbanded, and we're being contacted now when particular information is needed or when tasks are coming to the fore. So one of the things you can do now is there is a website that you could go on and you can get your Centennial swag. And so I encourage you to look at that. You'll find a link in the latest council newsletter, which I think came out yesterday, which I think will be good. And there are also calls out now. They're starting interviews with people who've lived in the city for quite some time. And so I suppose to the extent that you have people that you are aware of that would have very interesting stories, it would be good to get to one of us and let us know, and we could let people know to interview those particular people. So that's the latest report.
Great, thank you. I noticed there were banners up on El Camino saying that we have a centennial, and also noticed the announcement that there are recordings through StoryCorps that are going to be happening. And if you're selected for a StoryCorps for yourself and another person to tell your story about San Carlos, they get saved in the Library of Congress. This is a really cool opportunity, and I think you have up to 30 minutes to tell your story, and they record it. So thank you for the update. I'm getting kind of excited for all of these events and items. Thanks. We're on to item 7C. Any correspondence this evening?
Yes, through the chair, staff has left two different things at each chair. First is information from MTC ABAG on the current housing laws, as well as a PowerPoint, just for your perusal and interest. We are currently going through those now and trying to figure out how and if they will apply. There's quite a few as usual, so wanted to make sure you're in the loop as well. And actually leading into, well, I'll wait. I have an announcement related to that. The second thing is that we have, I sent an email about the draft EIR for the general plan reset, and in that mentioned that if you would like a hard copy to let me know, and I know a few of you did ask for that. I've also put the executive summary for the EIR at the chair for each of you. The EIR itself, which I didn't realize when I emailed you, is over 500 pages. Not including appendices. So if you want it, we can absolutely get you a copy, but I wanted to give you the executive summary first, and if there are certain sections you would like, let us know, but we can absolutely give you the full copy too. So if you could let me know either way, that would be great. And that's it.
Thank you. And the EIR is now available online, right? It's posted to the website?
It's online and hard copies at the library and City Hall as well.
Okay,
for
great.
public viewing.
So I'm going to go on sooner rather than later. I have to say that I had a hard time pulling down this meeting's packet. It would not, my Mac would not open it for whatever reason, but my non-Mac laptop did open it. So it's very strange. I could not access it, so I'm going to make sure that I can access the EIR.
We'll look into that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It might just be some kind of security setting.
I have a Mac, and I was able to download today's
Really?
packet, so
I tried like 5 times. That's very interesting.
okay.
Huh. Okay, thank you for that. So, and then item D, do we have any comments from planning staff, reports and updates for current projects or future meetings?
Yes, I have several announcements. To continue on with the comment about the MTC ABAG housing laws, there is a planning commissioner training on January 30th. If you are interested, hosted by the Planning Collaborative. I know a few of you have already registered. All 5 can go if you'd like. If you would like to go, registration has to be completed by the 23rd, this Thursday. But if you can go and are interested, I really would encourage it. They do really great trainings. And I believe there's dinner as well. We are trying to schedule a special meeting on March 31st, which is the 5th Monday of the month, for the Northeast Area Specific Plan Study Session. I'm not sure if we've heard back from all 5, but I do know we have a quorum, so we are planning on holding it on the 31st. And that leads me to just a few comments about the upcoming schedule. With the exception of a few meetings, it's going to be a very full next 3 months. We're expecting at the next meeting, February 3rd, the 2045 General Plan EIR hearing and study session. And then not at the next hearing, but within the next few months, Alexandria is going to be coming forward. The Downtown Streetscape Master Plan, the Northeast Area Specific Plan Study Session, the Multifamily Mixed Use Odds Recommendation to Council, Objective Design Standards, TDM study session, and I believe a few public works engineering projects. So it's going to be a very busy few months. So just to give you a heads up about that. And then let's see. Oh, lastly, we are hosting a community corner open house also on January 30th. It will be at Loyola Park. There's a building there that will be holding it, and it's going to be from 6:30 to 8:30, again, January 30th, and it's a chance for anyone in the community to come talk with staff, specifically ask questions about specific projects, which includes trees and slow streets, the Alexandria and Minkoff development projects, objective design standards, the Northeast Area Specific Plan, transportation demand management and parking, accessory dwelling units, and then the Downtown Specific Plan and Streetscape Master Plan. And again, this is an open house, so there's no presentations. We'll have staff representing all the projects, and if anyone has questions or wants to learn more, we encourage you to come. We'll have a few activities if people would like to bring their children as well. And so we hope to see people there. And that is it for my announcements.
And that's at Loyola Park on January 30th.
Correct.
6:30 to 8:30.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm glad you put ADUs in there. I think, yeah, people like to know.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to the portion of our agenda for public comment. Public comments limited to items not on tonight's agenda. The commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act, which is Government Code Section 54954.2. However, our general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or a report. Lynette, do we have anyone who would like to make a public comment this evening?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. I'll just wait for a minute to make sure nobody joins and wants to make an announcement. Lynette, anyone yet would like to make a public comment?
There are none.
Okay. Thank you. Then we'll close that opportunity. And I think that brings us on to item 9, which I believe is adjournment.
And through the chair, sorry, if I could ask to do a motion to close the public comment. I believe we need it for this one.
Oh, okay,
Since
thanks.
it was agendized, I'll verify,
Motion,
but just to,
I need a motion to close the public comment. Thank you.
I second the motion.
I can make that, and you get the second? Okay. Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Bundy,
Yes.
Commissioner Anand,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
Vice Chair Garvey,
Yes.
Chair Clements.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes. And I think that brings us to adjournment. An efficient meeting and very informative. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.